Welcome to the Mac Roundtable podcast, a discussion of all things Macintosh.
Good morning, Macworld, iWorld. Thanks for being here. We are members of the Mac Roundtable. We all do podcasts. Hopefully you know one or two of us. I think the easiest way to get started this morning is just let everybody introduce themselves. So guys, when I call out your name, then pick up your mics and talk about who you are. So let's see, here we go. Mr. John F. Braun.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. Hi, John F. Braun. I am one of the hosts or the co-host of MacGeekab podcast. As you can see here, Twitter, you can find me on John F. Braun or the podcast MacGeekab.com.
Thank you, John. Adam?
Yep, I'm Adam Christianson. I do the MacCast. So you can find it at MacCast.com, at MacCast on Twitter.
Katie?
I'm Katie Floyd. I do the Mac Power Users podcast along with David Sparks. You can find me on Twitter at Katie Floyd, or my personal website is katiefloyd.me.
Mr. Gamet.
Hey there, I'm Jeff Gamet from the Mac Observer, macobserver.com. You can find me on Twitter, jgamet.
Okay, Mr. Hamilton.
Hey, I'm Dave Hamilton. I am the other co-host of MacGeekab at macgeekab.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Dave Hamilton.
Mr. Sparks.
Hi, everybody. I'm David Sparks, part of the Mac Power Users, along with my pal Katie Floyd. I'm on Twitter at MacSparky.
Mr. Ray.
I'm Ken Ray. I do a podcast called macOS Ken, a daily podcast about Apple news Monday through Friday, except when I'm at Macworld, when it doesn't happen, and at macOS Ken on Twitter and Instagram.
Allison?
I'm Allison Sheridan of the Nosillacast podcast, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Macintosh bias. You can find it at podfeet.com, not nosillacast.com, but that's okay. Chuck's bad with the alphabet.
It redirects.
It does redirect.
And I'm Chuck Joyner. I do a little thing called MacVoices at MacVoices.com, and you can follow me at Chuck Joyner. So this
What
is...
about Don McAllister?
Oh, Don McAllister. Don McAllister.
I say you're not going to come and then I turn up and it's the slide.
Oh, Don, I'm sorry. Jeez.
What did I say at the beginning of the session? Did you include my slide?
I thought... I put... Never mind. Don McAllister, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello. ScreenCastsOnline over at ScreenCastsOnline.com, and I can't blame Chuck because I very nearly cancelled coming to Macworld, but luckily I was able to make it. So don't worry, Chuck. I'm sorry, I'll forgive you.
Okay, if that's the worst thing that happens, guys. Yeah, thanks. It's only the beginning, yeah. Can you imagine? So, guys, we got a lot of people here that we're going to try to make sure everybody participates. Hopefully we'll get a chance to have you all participate as well. To start things off, though, I would like everybody to go around and answer just one question and make it short and concise. What app do you use most on your iPad? Okay, and by the way, they haven't heard this question before, so they have to think a little bit. So whoever wants to start. Adam?
Yeah, it's really easy for me because my life is lived in an RSS reader for my show, so doing the research and stuff like that. So it's definitely got to be Mr. Reader on my iPad, followed probably by Pocket. So
good choices. Okay.
I've been spending a lot of time in Grandpa's Workshop with my nephew lately. That's pretty fun on the iPad.
Grandpa's Workshop?
Grandpa's Workshop. But I think OmniFocus is probably the one I use the most.
Okay, before you go, what's Grandpa's Workshop?
It's really fun. If you're 2 years old, you get to like hammer wood and measure stuff. It's great.
All right, sorry.
Grandpa's Workshop. Everybody.
Sorry I asked. Jeff?
I was kind of hoping we'd start at the other end so I could listen to a lot of other apps and then copy what people were saying. But I spent a lot of time in OmniFocus and actually Paper by 53.
Yeah, being an artist, you would.
I would love to have some great work use case, but it's Netflix because I spend so much time on my Mac. I do my writing on my Mac. I do my editing on my Mac. I do so much stuff on my Mac. By the time I get to my iPad, I'm relaxing. So Netflix is mostly what I use it for, and then Instapaper for the stuff that I'm like, oh, that would be great to read someday. got a great list of stuff that I'm going to read someday on Instapaper. It'll be fantastic.
Allison?
I think I'm just like Ken. I use mine for relaxing too. So Downcast is actually my favorite app. That's where I watch all my video podcasts. That's probably the primary thing I like it for.
Okay, well, probably 2 or even 3. Tweetbot, because I'm sort of addicted to Twitter, so I use Twitter a lot on the iPad.
What I was tweeting right now, sorry.
Oh, there you go, you carry on. I also use Mr. Reader, because I use it a lot for consumption, so, and that's where I get my RSS feeds fed into. And also OmniFocus. Recently, I tried OmniFocus 2 years ago, and I really liked it, but I made it too complicated. And now I've simplified what I do in OmniFocus, and I find I'm using it more and more and more, and I use it a lot on the iPad. I prefer the iPad version to the Mac version. That might change now that the new Mac version is out there.
Don't any of you people have real jobs? You're all talking about all these
No.
pleasure apps, which are, yeah, I know you don't. I use my iPad a lot for email. It's the first thing that I grab in the morning and the last thing that I put down at night. It's on my bedside table. So I do a lot of email on my iPad. I do the email triage on my iPad. But probably one of my favorite apps to use on my iPad is Instapaper, because I go through all those things that I want to read on my iPad, save them for Instapaper, and then my iPad becomes my own personal newspaper that I can sit down and relax in a big comfy chair with a cup of coffee and read through all of my articles in Instapaper.
Now, Chuck, I don't know if that was a very good question, because the thing is, as some of you may know, up until very recently, I didn't have an iPad, just an iPhone.
Fake it, John.
So technically, the answer would be none, but I would say the applications that I use, and I'm still trying to figure out, I like the difference between the two, or I appreciate the difference between the two. I'm finding some things that run okay on my iPhone don't run that well on the iPad or aren't tuned for it, but to answer the question, the applications I like, probably the one that I run the most, because I like taking pictures, and the iPhone 5S has a very nice camera, so I like Instagram. And I like sharing my pictures. I also like seeing other people's pictures and voting on them and all that. And I'm going to throw a couple of other ones in here really quick. When I'm driving, I like Waze. Waze is very cool. I love crowdsourced
You say one?
traffic reporting.
I thought you didn't have any apps, John. I thought it was too early.
And that's two.
Just one. Well, you got okay. You got
those are my two.
You got Waze in, so
and
okay.
I won't throw in 2 more.
Okay.
Maybe later.
Dave.
Yeah, so like Ken and Allison, I use my iPad during kind of downtime. Reading list in Safari is something I use, and that actually has worked out really well for me, queuing stuff up for my Macs and reading on my iPad. But lately, the app that I've been using a ton of was Fourscore, reading music charts and actually using it live to make notation on charts and then tapping through a score while playing along with it. So that's the one that I've been living in most lately.
Hey, Dave,
Chuck? Yeah?
have you got the Bluetooth foot pedal for that yet?
Well, no, because being a drummer, I can't like randomly decide, oh, it's the end of a page, so I can take my foot off of the hi-hat right now. No,
doesn't work, does it?
I don't have that option, no.
Why are we sitting on page 22?
Yeah, right, exactly, no.
I started that out this way because I was curious to see who uses it for work, who uses it for play, and how much mix there would be. And it's really fascinating to listen to all of you. There is a mix. And I'll throw mine in. I'm somewhere between Mr. Reader, Adam, with you, and Flipboard. I love Flipboard because Flipboard is the only way I will ever look at Facebook or Google+, because I just never get there otherwise. But it's attractive, it's easy to use, and it's kind of fun. So that's mine. That's mine.
So other than David, who has a 2-year-old that actually creates buildings with his iPad, we've all proven that the iPad is strictly just a consumption device, Chuck.
Perhaps. And that, thank you, David, for reading my mind, because the next thing was going to be, do any of you create content or use it? Now, Katie, you sound like you would be the one to start this off because you do email, and that's consuming but also creating.
Yeah, I do a lot of email on my iPad. I do a lot of outlining on my iPad. I use Omni Outliner. Don just released some great screencasts on Omni Outliner, and I think he made some of them free. So that's a great place to start with Omni Outliner. I'm not one of these wacky mind map people. I don't understand how that all works. Although I got
love mind
now
maps.
that I got the 5-minute session on it. But in fact, all of my presentations for Macworld started in an Omni Outliner file. And sometimes I find I just can't sit at my computer and outline. Sometimes I have to grab my iPad and it comes to me in different places. And if I move around or maybe go in the backyard or on the couch or whatever, I'll pop it open and add a few things. So I do a lot of outlining on the iPad. I do a lot of responding to email on the iPad and a lot of email triage on the iPad. I'm still looking for a better email app. For the iPad, something with text expander support and something that will support multiple accounts, and I haven't found it yet, but I'm still looking.
David Sparks and I are the crazy mind mapping people. We were just talking this morning.
Hippies.
Well, actually, David's presentation in Rapid Fire was really good because it talked about right brain, left brain, and I find using a mind map a really easy way to plan things out. I planned all of my presentations through a mind mapping application called iThoughts HD, and I also use it for my packing list. So I can create different categories of packing things, and I can drop them all in, all the different things I gotta do. And then once I've packed my charger for my iPad, I tap it and I change it to yellow, and now I know that one's done. And I can just close them all up as I finish. And I use the same one for Macworld every year because I got to remember this charger and this camera and all this different kind of stuff I got to bring. And I think David does a lot of the same stuff using his.
I should share with you my FileMaker automated packing list. I put in the amount of days I'm away, and it knows that, like, pants.
How many black
I need,
shirts?
Yeah, well, exactly. How many black shirts? I need one per day. Pants, I might need, 1/2 per day, and it calculates the content.
Program.
That's great.
Awesome.
I know.
Really.
Something wrong with me.
Dave, this is exactly why I love you. Okay, I use Omni Outliner all the time, and the presentation I did yesterday, the one I have this afternoon, started in Omni Outliner on my iPad using Omni Sync Server to get it back to my Mac. I write full-on articles for Mac Observer on my iPad in IA Writer, and then it uses iCloud and syncs back to my Mac, so I have the content there so that I can do any other final edits before it actually goes live. And then, of course, I'm drawing all the time in paper, so no, the iPad is not a content creation tool.
Well, the only thing I find with the iPad, I love my iPad and I use it to create content as well as consume, without wanting to turn it into a mind map, love fest. I've started to use mind maps a lot for if I'm watching videos, if I'm watching a session where I would normally take notes. I always find that if I take written notes, I'll end up with 6 or 7 pages of notes and never ever refer to them again. With a mind map, it's all there encapsulated on a single page, and I can actually see, everything and focus in on various aspects. I find that to be really good to review videos and stuff. But I still find a bit of friction with the iPad when I'm working. Great for email triage, but more often than not, I'll find that email's going to take me longer than 30 seconds to answer, so I'll leave that and wait till it syncs back with the Mac. And there are lots of sort of little niggly things like that where I probably could do it on the iPad, but it's just that little bit of extra friction that stops me from doing it, and I will revert back to the Mac. So I do use the iPad to triage things, to do some simple things, but if it's anything that needs sort of real multitasking or something with multi-windows, you've got to switch back to the Mac, really.
Don, before we leave you, you say it creates a little friction. What do you mean by friction? What kind of friction?
It's just sometimes harder to do things. It's great if you're in a single focused sort of frame of mind and you're doing one job, but if it's something that might need 2 or 3 applications where you might need to copy and paste or you might need to refer to something else, just that little bit of friction does actually stop me from using the iPad as a full business tool. And I'm sort of hoping that, in iOS 8 or future versions of iOS, they start to address that. I know some people say, well, no, because they want to keep it simple. But I think just an extra layer of complexity, even optional layer of complexity or a greater ability to do several things at once will actually bring you more into the business sphere.
Yeah, so I'm going to pile on the Omni Outliner thing. So I mentioned I use Mr. Reader, and that's where I'm doing a lot of my research. So I'm going back and forth a lot, and I don't find that to have that process to have much friction. Just using the fast users, app switching to jump back and forth. So read something, make some notes, and I go pretty seamlessly back and forth. But the other thing I really prefer on my iPad than even my Mac is photo post-processing. And I use Snapseed for that, which I think it's brilliant because it's super fast because the touch controls are so optimized for the iPad. I actually prefer it versus Photoshop or anything else on my Mac because I can just fly through something.
John?
I want to just dovetail on what Adam said here. So, like I mentioned, I haven't tried a lot of tools on there. But I would agree that if I'm doing content creation, when I do photography, I find that the iPhone and I would imagine the iPad touch interface does very well. Instagram is very easy to use. The third-party tools, like I use, Adam says use Snapseed. I like Snapseed. I also like Photoshop Express to do some very minor touch-up. The Flickr app is pretty straightforward. My pushback, though, for the other type of thing, for example, we're posting articles today. We use a tool called Expressions Engine to post them, and I could not imagine using a touch keyboard to get any sort of... They get the same level of throughput that I do when I do it on my computer. at the very least, I think I'm going to be looking into getting an external keyboard because the touch keyboard, I mean, it's as good as it's going to get, but I touch type and I would just get incredibly frustrated. Plus the way the file system is organized, I don't know if creating an article would be as quick.
I want to take a quick survey of this panel here. How many of you have an external keyboard for your iPad?
Define external keyboard.
So not just using the touch keypad.
Okay, so a cover or an actual Bluetooth keyboard.
Right, just Bluetooth keyboard. Pretty much most of us. How many of you brought it with you? How many of you use it at least once a week? So I don't know if I would invest in it, John. I have one, and I love it, and I never carry it anywhere.
I've written full articles on the iPad. In fact, on the iPad Mini, an Expression Engine, and editing is fine.
Just gotta get used to it.
Yeah,
just
I touch all the time.
When you were speaking before, Don, about email and that pain point, I feel exactly the same way. For some reason, except when I'm on an airplane. And then I have my MacBook Pro or my MacBook Air, and I could easily pull that out and type on it. But I triage email. I reply to emails, and I'll do a reply that's 5 paragraphs long on my iPad.
It is annoying to type on.
It is, but once I get into that mode, there is that pain, and it melts away very, very quickly as soon as, for some reason, when I'm on an airplane. I don't know why.
I think it'd be more often than that if you gave it a chance. I've been thinking lately about the idea of delight versus productivity, where we've on these devices, and I think there's a certain amount of delight you get from using the iPad, and I find that I kind of have to embrace that once in a while and not worry about, well, I could type this and be done 3 minutes faster if I had a Mac out. But the fact is, if I had a Mac out, I'd be watching the Twitter in the menu bar, and stuff would be going on. And at the end of the day, it might not actually be faster.
You say you have trouble focusing?
Everybody here does. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but some more than others.
Yeah,
David.
but I have rituals where I'll take the iPad with me somewhere, and I'll get a lot of work done. It's not just airplanes, I guess is the point. But it's something you have to embrace, and I do think that the hardware has advanced now that we're with these new processors. The software developers have come a long way in making it more productive, where, I'm constantly reevaluating the role of the iPad in my life. But the thing about delight is the thing I've been really focusing on lately is there's things that I do that are just more fun on the iPad, and why not do it if it's more fun there?
Yeah, I have to say that if you do crack something, it is delightful that you actually managed to do it on the iPad. But one thing where Apple have addressed this friction problem I mentioned before, I used to find with using Safari and mobile Safari, 1Password, you could use 1Password on the iPad, but you have to go into 1Password and use their browser to get all these things. The iCloud keychain is brilliant. iCloud keychain, if you're using your Mac and your iPad, that's one example where the friction point has been removed by an addition to the operating system. iCloud keychain on the Mac and on iOS is brilliant. So now,
Can I give a PSA on that? If you use iCloud keychain and you're storing passwords in there, and you have a 4-digit passcode on your iPad, now all of your banking information, your credit cards and everything is protected with that 4-digit passcode. So just don't do, okay, good. Yeah, that's much better, Don. 6 numbers, that's great. But make sure you realize that that's what you've done, and how many people have seen you type that in sitting next to you on a plane or the gym or wherever you are.
Yeah. Ken, I want to pull you in, because I'm a little surprised I understand the Netflix thing completely. And maybe that's your research for Mission Log. I'm trying to help you, Ken.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
I totally forgot about that. Right, yes.
Yes.
But so I do another podcast that's all about Star Trek. We're watching every episode of every series of Star Trek, starting with the pilot that they made in 1966 and ending a few years ago with Enterprise. And so, yes, I'm watching it for that. But then also, I started a publication for iOS a few months ago called iChart Magazine. Same kind of content, a little bit extra actually. Just added a iFilmmaker feature, which should be today, except there's no magazine today because I'm here instead of at home doing it. But there's a lot of grabbing pictures online and things like that and transferring that. It's sort of become an interesting. It's weird because I don't use it to create the content, but I couldn't do the magazine without it. It's made for the iPad and the iPhone, so I use it to test, and I also use it to do a bunch of the screenshots and things like that. I don't think of it as, well, I'm going to my iPad now to do this, but it's, as I'm listening to you guys talk, it's an integral part of what I do, but there's no one tool. I'm using Desk Connect, which is by RAX, if anybody knows him. Oh, I guess he actually uses his real name now because he's over 18. He was a kid. He was one of the jailbreak kids, and so he used to be REX. He's got a great tool called Disconnect, and it basically is the promise of AirDrop, but 1,000 times better because you just sign up and you link up all your devices with it. And then if I want to send a picture, it used to be if I was doing something for the publication, I would take it and either email it, but that would end up filling up my email box, or I would wait for iPhoto in the cloud or whatever photo stream to sync it, but that took a long time. I can drop something in, and 3 seconds later it's on my Mac, or it's on my iPad, or it's on my iPhone, wherever I want to send it to. I guess the whole thing is, it's sort of, and this has been actually one of the interesting things, the iFilmmaker thing that Handheld Hollywood, Taz Goldstein does, and the guys who are actually doing the photo talk with him yesterday, it sort of just becomes another tool. I'm not thinking of it as, well, now I'm going to create on my iPad, or now I'm going to create on my iPhone, or on my Mac. It's just more like, I have to do this thing, what's the best way to do it? And I think even without thinking, I'm grabbing what the best thing is. Sometimes that's the phone, sometimes that's the iPad. Most of my time is spent on my computer, but I mean, it's all one thing in a way.
Okay.
An ecosystem, yes, thank you.
A lot of it has to do, I think, Chuck, with the tool that you have with you. I mean, what is the tool that I use most often? It's my iPhone. Why? Because it's in my pocket all the time. Most recently, I just moved to an iPad mini, and I'm loving the Retina iPad mini because it's something that you can stick in the purse, you can stick in a bag, and you can take it with you. And now that is what I'm taking into meetings and taking my notes and syncing them up with Evernote or iWorld or whatever tool that I'm using. But it's getting better, and I almost did Macworld iPad only. In fact, I've done that. I've done that in the past, Allison. I've done Macworld iPad only. One of the things that held me back from doing an iPad only this year is I was giving a couple of sessions, but perhaps I wasn't quite done with my slides yet. What? Yeah, it's possible. We're not all teachers' pets, Allison. And I was going back and doing some things for work, and I needed Microsoft Office because I was editing contracts for work. But hey, guess what? Microsoft. There have always been Office solutions for the iPad before, but now there's full-on Microsoft Office for the iPad. So I think it's very possible that next year I can do Macworld iPad only, perhaps with a little preparation on my part. And I hope that we're going to get more of that interoperability in iOS 8. I think iOS 7 was a major redesign, and somebody said it was really redesigned for the iPhone, and it felt like they just kind of tacked the iPad along with it. And I hope with iOS 8, and perhaps more with iOS 9, we'll start to get a little more interoperability between the apps.
Okay. Dave?
Katie, you said something, you could do Macworld next year, iPad only, with a little bit of preparation. And that has always been the case with the iPad, right? I mean, there's some things you just couldn't do initially with it, and those sort of melt away. And there's still some things you can't do with the iPad. But anytime you're going to do something with it, you need to have thought out your path ahead of time. And that's the biggest difference between doing work on an iPad and doing work on a computer, where you can sort of just kind of make it happen there. If I have my MacBook Air with me, I can travel and I know I can do everything I need to do. If it's my iPad only, and I've done some trips with my iPad, I have to stop and think, what are the things that I think I'm going to need to do? Do I have the right apps? Do I have access to the right data? Because I don't have all my data synced to it, but I have my data accessible from it. So that was an interesting sort of aside there. Yeah.
But is that, Dave, do you think that's because we're still in a transition period?
Totally.
We're just not there? Because I have the same experience. I've recently bought a MacBook Air mainly for plane travel, because I still need the ability to go back and forth. And Adam, I'm really intrigued by how you say you can move back and forth effectively between what you need to move back and forth between. I still don't have that capability. I still want to do things, kind of the Mac way, and maybe that's my problem.
I think that has to melt away for the iPad to truly be that device that we're not afraid to grab. There's not that hesitation of, okay, yeah, I can do this.
Right.
I'm golden.
Right. Okay, so Allison, I think it was Allison, or no, Katie. Katie opened the can of worms. Is Microsoft Office on the iPad relevant? It was just announced here yesterday, and so the question is it relevant?
I actually would like to ask the audience. So Microsoft Office was announced yesterday. You can get Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. In order to actually use it, you have to pay $100 a year for the subscription service, and it gives it to you on 5 Macs and PCs and all your mobile devices. So I'd like to see a show of hands. How many people are excited, going to go download that, going to go do it?
Wait, Allison, I want to amend that.
No, that's my audience. My question. You can ask your question. I think I saw 8 or 10. And of our panel, how many are going to download that and buy it, pay for it?
Well, to use or for research purposes?
Let's say to use.
Okay.
I will. David and I will, and I think we're in the same boat. I mean,
Yeah, I'm already in. I have to for my work.
by day.
But you're already paying the subscription service?
That's the question. Is it? I think we're looking at it. We look at it as, why in the world would I want to pay $100 to have Word on my iPad? Whereas really, what this is you're already paying the $100 because you've got Word on your desktop. And now the iPad is just a free bonus for you.
Okay, Dave, you explained better what Trek was trying to say, that I asked the wrong question. If you are not already paying $100 a year, how many people, because it's on the iPad, are now going to download it and pay the $100 a year? One?
Yeah, there you go.
Two. All right.
Good. So does that mean
an exhaustive research study? Thank you.
Does that mean that the rest of you are already paying for 365?
No, the ones who had raised their hands before are already.
So a couple. Well,
yeah. But so that's cool for you if you already had to do it. This is awesome.
I mean, it's easy then, but it doesn't sound like it's going to drive a lot of people to it.
Now the second part of your question: are you excited about it?
Woohoo! PowerPoint. You will make slides.
It's important that it's here.
It's important that it's here because that's the other world that I live in. That's not the world I live in right now. Thankfully, I like this world much better. But that's the other world that I live in for now.
I think the big disappointment for a lot of people is that it's part of the Office 365 subscription. And what they were hoping for was just a full-on standalone version of Microsoft Office that they paid whatever, we'll call it $50, even though people would freak out if it was $4. And then they'd just be done with it, and they'd have their own full version of Office on their iPad, and they could go. Because it's part of Office 365 and a subscription, a lot of people are going to be really upset and really disappointed with what Microsoft released, no matter how good it turns out to be.
Adam, Ken?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ken first, then Adam.
The more interesting thing about it to me is the fact that we're 1 month into a new CEO at Microsoft, and he went ahead and pulled the trigger. We've been talking about this for a very long time. We heard rumors about it over a year ago, and now that Ballmer's out and Satya Nadella is in, here's this new thing. Did I see an exchange between Tim Cook and Nadella on Twitter?
Tim Cook welcomed him. I don't know if Nadella replied.
I believe he did. Yeah.
He did it during the keynote here.
And that's really interesting. That to me is the more interesting thing about it. I'm not going to. I ran Parallels on my iMac for about 2 years because I felt like I had to use Office for Mac. And then I finally tried Pages one day, and that was the last time I used Office for Mac. I don't care about that. What's more interesting is the fact that with the new guy at Microsoft, they're willing to let go of some of their old stuff. And that actually makes the whole thing a lot more exciting than what I can use on my iPad and what I can't.
Yeah, and I was saying this yesterday when we did the Mac show with British Tech Network, because the same question came up. And I think you're doing your survey at the wrong audience, Allison. Because this is really about the folks that are PC people. We have to remember there are tons of people that live their life on PC and use iPads. And they're living in Office on those devices, and they use Word, and that's what they use. So now they have the ability to easily transition those documents and stuff, and it's going to make the iPad experience that much better for them, which I think is great for Apple products, right?
So maybe asking an audience that's already using iPads is not an audience?
These folks are using iWork and Pages.
He doesn't care what you think at all. That's what he just said.
Oh, yeah, that's what I said.
So, John F. Braun, I'm curious, do you have any dog in this fight? Because I know you're not an Office user.
I am.
Are you?
No, I'm an Office user. So
okay.
I am a Office 2011, which is the last version they released for the Mac, and I'm not sure it'd be nice if they released an update.
They've already said there's a new version that works.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I heard that. But yeah, as far as it on the iPad, I think for people that incorporate iPads into their workflow, they've already found another solution long ago. They've either abandoned Office as a standard, or they've gone to, there's a OpenOffice, LibreOffice, I think was one that you made me aware of, Allison. Or you just go, like Ken was saying, you go to something like Pages. I mean, I remember, I think one year they were here, and they were, when the iPad had just come out, I asked the Microsoft guy, so like, how about Office on the iPad? And he's like, well, I can't really talk about that. I took it to mean, it's under wraps and it's coming out next week. No, it was like they're not. It's not even on their radar. So, yeah, I just think it's too little, too late.
David?
I thought the interesting thing was it's been so long, and there's these two warring factions at Microsoft. There's the people who want to sell the Surface, and they want Office to be just on the Surface because that's a big selling point for a lot of people that probably aren't at Macworld. And then there was the people that make Office who want to have it on 100 million iPads. And I always assumed when it happened, it was going to be a compromise, that they were going to put it out on iPad, but they were going to cripple it like they kind of did with the Office app on the iPhone. And I just have spent 10 minutes with it, but following up on Ken's point, they haven't crippled it. It looks to me like they've tried to make a legitimate version of Office for the iPad.
It's way better than on the Surface.
Yeah.
The Surface, the targets are too small for your fingers.
So I'm impressed by that. Now, that being said, I have Office in my day job, but I hardly ever use it in my day job either because I'm just nerdy enough I've been able to work around it. And frankly, Office on the Mac isn't all that great. Word for me crashes pretty regularly. I feel like when I start a Word document, that it's like I'm lighting a fuse on one of those old, country western movies, and I don't know how long it is, but the dynamite is under my Mac, and at some point it's going to explode, and it happens pretty regularly, to such an extent that I write stuff in Byword in text, and I give it to somebody else to deal with Office. But I am impressed that it looks like they made an attempt with it. I haven't looked at it long enough to know yet, but they didn't just show up for the sake of showing up. Don?
Yeah, the thing that interested me, they actually released it when I was on the plane yesterday, so I didn't actually know about it until I actually got back to the hotel. But they did release OneNote earlier on, or last week, which was quite surprising. Now, I sort of knew that OneNote was on the iPad, but I've never ever really bothered to use it. I'm a big Evernote user. But once they released OneNote for the Mac, that sort of changed the game, really. I can now have a look at this application on the Mac and on the iPad and on the iPhone and evaluate it and see where it stands up. Now, it probably won't replace Evernote for me, but it might have a place. And I just think it's very significant that they sort of did OneNote first on its own, and then the week later they followed it up with Office. Interestingly, on the week of Macworld as well, which I think is
during the keynote. It was at 10 a.m. during the keynote.
Yeah, so that's quite a nice tip of the hat from Microsoft to the Macworld to release it, on a week like that.
This might be the gateway drug for the PC people to bring more of them to the iPad.
Sure.
That's an interesting point.
Okay, here's what I see as the really interesting part about Office 365 coming out for the iPad, OneNote coming out for the Mac and the iPad. It's that we're at an Apple-specific conference. We're all dyed-in-the-wool, Kool-Aid drinking fans here. And what's the big topic today and yesterday? It's Microsoft. That wouldn't have happened even a couple years ago.
Jeff, this is the first time I've heard anyone talk about it, so I wouldn't say it's the hot topic.
I've been hearing about it everywhere I've gone yesterday and today. And in yesterday morning, people were coming up to me. Has Microsoft made an announcement yet? Yeah, so I'm seeing that as a very interesting thing for us to watch going forward. Has Microsoft been able to do something where they're suddenly an interesting company and worth paying attention to, and they can be a hot topic?
Can I ask Allison a question?
If you have to.
Okay. What do you think the hot topic is? Because I'm actually wondering if this show has changed to the point, 2007, it's the iPhone. 2009, it's Apple's leaving. Jeff is under the impression that it's Microsoft. Personally, I'm under the impression that it's iBeacons, but that's because iBeacons are like crack to me now, and I'm just like totally fascinated with it. Are we actually showing up and are we going to walk away each thinking that there's a different hot topic because we're all coming with different things and there's such a different group of people out there, both presenting and as vendors?
The first thing I thought of was iBeacons, but I still don't actually understand what they are or what they do. Yeah, apparently I've got to talk to those iBeacon scavenger hunt people. But yeah, that is the thing I've heard people mention more than anything else. I did hear that it was on the British Tech Network that you guys talked about that, but I haven't had anybody say, wow, did you hear? Microsoft, yay.
Okay, so to turn this in a little different direction, but to keep it kind of on topic, and Adam, I'm going to start with you. This is a subscription service, now. So it's not like you buy it, and there were plenty of Office clones, Office utilities, Office converters that we could get that were ours. And once you bought it, you used it. Now, you're going to have to renew that Office 365 thing every year to keep it, not only on your Macs, but on your iPads. Is that move a good one for Microsoft, or would it have been better just to sell it even for $50 and let people buy it that wanted to buy it?
I don't know if it's a good move or not. What I see is that is the trend, and I think that's the future for a lot of the big name vendors. Adobe did it, then Microsoft did it. I'm afraid that's the future of software. Is we are going to rent the stuff, and if you want to have access to it, you're going to continue to pay yearly or monthly or whatever. That seems to be the trend they're doing. I will divulge that I recently subscribed to the trial of 365 because somebody sent me a Word document. I needed to open it in Pages, and it had Calibre, is that the font?
Yeah.
It was a Microsoft font, so I just needed the font, so I downloaded it for the font, the trial. And my renewal's coming up, and now I'm trying to decide if I really need Word or not, because there is, on occasion, when you get that Word document, that just doesn't work in Pages. And so I do deal with that with the business side of what I do, and that can get sometimes
LibreOffice.
Yeah, and honestly, from a business perspective, if I'm spending $100 a year for my business, that's not a lot if it makes my pain point of having to try to figure out how to deal with that document easier. I mean, an hour of my time is in my mind is worth that $100.
That's a great point, Don.
Yeah, I think really sort of the larger organisations have been struggling with the whole price point on iOS and the sort of the race to the bottom. You know, the way the software is having to be priced really, really cheaply for people to buy it. And this subscription-based service, I think, is you know, they can give the app to you for free, but to actually use it properly, you need to do a subscription service. And it's probably the only way, really, that these sort of mega corporations are going to be able to actually monetize and keep the bottom line, you know, where they need it by offering these services separately to the actually buying the application. So we're probably going to see a lot more of these sorts of deals.
I guess I just question it sometimes because I'm seeing my credit card bill come in, and it gets longer and longer and longer. And I feel like I'm being pecked to death by ducks, you know, as the balance gets bigger all the time. But I do use the services.
I think it's really that. I think for a lot of people, it's going to be that business versus consumer thing. And what's great is on the consumer side, we have great options. If I wasn't doing it for my business, if I was just dealing with Office documents, you know, personally and stuff like that, I'd stick with Byword and Pages and all that stuff and be perfectly fine. But I live in a wider world in my business world.
I think Jeff brought up that this is good for Apple, and Steve Sheridan tweeted an article from Reddit he saw this morning that Apple is getting the 30% cut off those subscription services. So when both of you subscribe, Apple will be getting that 30% of your $100 a year.
That's if they buy it through the application itself.
I will say there's one other thing that's really interesting. Just since you started asking this question, Chuck, you just said I use those services. It used to be about a tool. I have Adobe Audition 5.5. I don't think I'll be going past that. And I may even have to hold on to my 13-inch MacBook Pro for as long as I possibly can when it's only good for one more thing, and that'll be using Adobe Audition 5.5, because otherwise I have to start paying them every year to use it, and that kind of bothers me. But you've already started the transition, because you didn't say, I use this piece of software or I use this tool. You said, I use these services. Word didn't used to be a service, and now it is.
Okay, I confess, I'm guilty. Or I've been brainwashed.
I wasn't really accusing you. I just thought it was interesting.
Well,
can we all just take 1 minute to say we miss Word 5?
5.1.
Yeah, 5.1.
Yeah.
I'll pay a subscription for that.
Yeah, that's true.
I've got my old SE30 if you want to run it there.
I think I'd like that.
It's really fast.
Yeah.
Guys, we only have a little bit of time left, and I want to make sure we give the audience a chance to come up and ask any questions you might have about pretty much anything of anybody here on the stage except Allison.
Is there a mic over here?
Oh, yeah. Oh, they put the mic up here. Okay. If you want to drag it back then with you, Linda, thank you.
Okay. Two things as quick as I can make them. First, a request that, thank you, Charles, please make that taller. First, a request for all of you. When John Braun shakes his fist at Apple, and when Katie and David have an individual on like you did on your most recent episode who had some specific, sometimes very good criticisms of Apple, would you kindly encourage them and audience members to send those to, feedback@apple.com? And let them...
Apple.com/feedback.
Thank you very much. Apple.com/feedback.
I got a text expander snippet for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Good for you. Good for you, Katie. but let them know what we want as customers. So that's first request. Second item, our house was recently broken into, and I will just tell this story very briefly. MacBook Air was taken. I was able to, because I had it on Find My iDevice, my iPhone, my Mac, et cetera, I was able to erase it remotely, which of course is the most important thing you can do. Those of you, again, John and Dave, Katie and David especially, when you have people, and actually, I don't know if you can do this or not, Don, but actually, Allison, everybody who has people who do Mac support and iThings support, please encourage not only your audience members who probably already do this, but also the people that they support to make sure they have at least that item taken care of. Find My iThing, so that it can be erased remotely, if nothing else.
Good advice.
For those of you who don't know what she's talking about, when you activate Find My iPhone, Find My iPad, Find My Friend on your Mac, your iPhone, your iOS device, and if you haven't already, just take a minute, pause the podcast, or if you're in our audience, pull it out right now and look, and make sure that you've got Find My Friends, Find My iPhone, or not Find My Friends, Find My iPhone, Find My iPad, Find My Mac activated. That will allow you to track your device. And I actually know a couple of people who've gotten their devices back because they've had that activated. And more importantly, it will allow you to remote wipe that device to make sure. And I've already taken care of your comments.
Don't look at it as a guarantee, though. My future son-in-law had his iPad stolen, and it never came up on the network for him to ever be able to erase it.
So
yeah. Now the problem is that if the thief or the person who took it turned it off and never turns it back on again, or never turns it back on and connects it to the network.
So, of course, I have to turn it to about backup, too. So, hopefully they didn't take your backup drives. But the other thing I'm going to throw out there is if you're not doing some sort of off-site backup, because if they break in, take your laptop and your backup drives, and you have to wipe it, even if you get it back, where's your data? So I know a lot of people, because they listen to my show, they do Time Machine or they do Super Duper or Carbon Copy Clone or whatever your backup system is locally, but a lot of people still haven't made that transition to some sort of off-site backup.
I think it was Steven Scorsese who had his computer.
And I don't care which service you use. There's a bunch of great options out there. Find the one that's going to work for you. But
he
I
had
think
his
it's
backup
critical.
drive stolen along with his computer, and he lost all of the screenplays he had ever written.
Ooh, that's ugly.
This is at the show. I like supporting people who are here at the show.
Yeah.
And also turn on your iCloud backup on your iPhone. I've known too many people who have lost stuff on their iPhone because once it hits the water and once it hits the ground, take it into Apple. They're just going to give you a new phone. And when you say, well, what about my stuff? They're going to say it's back up, right?
One more question from the audience. Please come to the mic, and then we'll get out of here and let you all go back to the show.
Run like the wind. Love this guy.
I just wanted to speak a second for, we were talking about
get down to the mic. We can't hear you.
All right, is this good, Allison?
There you go.
All right, great. On the free Microsoft, it came out this model, this pay model, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, first of all, when the iPhone came out, you didn't like it. The iPad, that was useless. And then you waited and waited. All this time, we found all these alternate solutions, and now you want us to buy your products that you released first day of Macworld. I'm sorry, you burned me, you turned me off, I waited, you gave me nothing, you laughed at me, and you screamed developers. Okay, I'm done. I moved on and found other things. I don't really need you, but thank you for being around for competition. But you've really shown what bad competition can really be.
A round of applause.
Great is it that we have this flourishing group of developers, many of whom who are here today, who have created all these alternative products for us to allow us to use both in the interim and now continuing forward because they've had this huge head start on Microsoft.
And folks, do yourself a favor. Go out on the floor, and when you go by that booth that you think, that's not something for me, stop and let them talk to you for 30 seconds. I think you'll be quite surprised at how many things are there really for you that you may not just fully appreciate, may not be evident by the company name or the kiosk or whatever, but it's well worth your time.
And also go to the booth of your favorite developer, too, and just take 30 seconds to say, thank you, I really enjoyed your app, I use it a lot, things like that. I know a lot of you have already done that, but, don't be afraid to do that. These developers are awesome people, and they will give you time, and they really appreciate hearing that we like their stuff and we use it.
Well, and every vendor that's here, whether you use their products, like their products or not, they are supporting this being here. Just simply their presence. I mean, they paid for these booths, and they they are the foundation of what happens here and doing it on this scale. So make sure you thank them for that too.
Amen, Dave.
Amen.
And the other thing is, you get a chance to talk to the people who are making the apps you love. A lot of times the people standing at these booths are the people who are doing the code. So if there's a feature that you'd like or something you don't understand, talk to the guys.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we're just a little bit over time, so we're going to get out of here. We'll be around if you'd like to talk to any of us, but thank you so much for coming. Enjoy
Thank you, Chuck,
the show.
for moderating.
Thank you. Thank you. Don McAllister, ladies and gentlemen.
Take a bow. Take a bow.
We'll see you next year right here. We'll save your seat.
Thank you for listening to the Mac Roundtable podcast. For show notes and links to subscribe to the Mac Roundtable, please visit our website at macroundtable.com. And to email in comments, ideas for discussions, and questions, send them to macroundtable@gmail.com. Until the next podcast, think Mac.